welcome. Today we are going to talk about the business of iridology. Now, as we are going through this, I've got a bunch of questions that I've already curated from people. If you have a question that you would specifically like me to answer about the business of doing iridology, please type it, give it to me in the chat. If you're with me on the webinar, give it to me in the comments. If you're with me on Facebook, if you're with me on Instagram, give it to me there as well. And if it's appropriate for what we're discussing, I will absolutely do my best to answer it for you. So I encourage you to engage with me in our time together. I mean, you've invested this time to be here, so why not make the most of it, correct? Feel free to ask questions as you've got them. And again, if I know it's coming up, I will address it in the sequence that I've got things prepped in. But if it's something that I haven't already got prepped, I will do my best to answer it for you. It's really important as we talk about iridology that we understand that iridology has come a long way, even in just the 4 decades that I've been involved with it. And so when we practice iridology, we want to be practicing with the most current and up-to-date information there is. There is so much misinformation out there, particularly being perpetrated by iridologists who've studied under teachers who have not kept up to date, and iridologists who have not upgraded and updated their skills. So again, I encourage you to ask questions as you've got them. Now, most of you have probably been with me for a while, and that's why you are with me here today. You've maybe been to other webinars, or you're a part of my private Facebook group, or maybe you're one of my current students, and I am so glad you're here. I do want to take just a moment to introduce myself so that you understand why I am qualified to actually give you information about the business of doing iridology. I got into holistic healing well over 4 decades ago. I had some health concerns of my own. The medical doctors weren't addressing them in a way that I thought was appropriate. I happened to meet a young man who, a few years older than me. He was gorgeous. He was funny. He was smart. He knew a bit about iridology and herbology and nutrition. And okay, I fell in love with him. And I married the guy, and we've actually been married for 42 years now, so that's pretty cool. But it was that meeting him and learning what he knew that got me launched. I was already sort of interested in it. I was interested in nutrition as a high school student. Back then, wheat was not bad for you. And I used to literally grind the grain and make the bread by hand because my parents didn't have a fancy stand mixer. And I would make whole wheat bread for the family every week, only my family didn't appreciate it. Mom and dad thought it was just over the top. They were happy with 60% whole wheat styrofoam bread. And so I often had to give my whole wheat bread away because my family wouldn't eat it. So I've been interested in holistic stuff since I was a teenager, which is maybe a little bit weird. And it was just the perfect opportunity when I met my husband, met this guy and became his wife, and launched everything from that meeting. Over the decades that I've been in business, I've written and self-published several books. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and Level 2, and the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook, which is the textbook we use in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program. I've also designed and taught many courses over the years. I started out with teaching a 20-hour herbal training program for people to go and buy their herbs already prepared in a health food store. How do you use these? How do you know what they're good for, what's appropriate, what's not? And then the students loved that so much they wanted to understand formulations. And so I put together 16 hours of training on understanding the synergy in a herbal product to understand that it could probably be used for a lot more than what was being stated on the label. And that was a huge hit. Designed and taught the Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2. So some of you might know BioK more as muscle testing, right? And there's several different uses for muscle testing. And so that's what I have taught in Biokinesiology Level 1 and 2. Also prenatal educator. I was a certified prenatal instructor with the ICEA for a couple of years. Loved doing that, still love it. Prenatal work, pregnancy, fertility work is still a huge passion of mine in my clinic. And so I still do a lot of work with those kinds of things, PCOS, infertility, pregnancy support, especially for high-risk pregnancies, postnatal support. And of course, my huge passion right now, as far as teaching, is the dynamic iridology assessment system, which is what we're going to talk a bit about today. So stay with me till the end of our time today. And again, please ask questions as you've got them. I want you to be typing in questions. I want this time to be useful for you. And really just so important that it is useful for you. I love questions, as I've got a student in the group with us on the webinar right now, and she will attest to the fact that I will answer any question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Oh, let me rephrase that. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Okay, so please do ask questions. And as we go through, I'm going to answer a whole bunch of questions. I'm actually going to turn off my screen share. And okay, how do I turn off my screen share? I don't remember how to turn off my screen share. So there we go. I'm just going to put me right in the center. Sorry about that, guys. There's sometimes tech eludes me. I've got my list of questions that I'm going to work through. Again, if it triggers another question, please ask it. So there are no right or wrong answers to these questions. These are just my answers to these questions based on 4 decades of experience. How does using iridology with my clients help my clients? And then how does it help my business? Well, those two questions are really intertwined. They're like this, they're best friends. And so with this, we need to look at the fact that iridology helps me to understand my clients' needs better. It helps me to take their symptoms and then combine that with what I see in the irides, which is their genetic potential. So their own potential as well as what they've inherited. Combine that with their sclerae, which tells me where the hot spots are right now. And that guides me to asking specific questions that will help me to get the answers I need in order to use my nutrition and my herb background to create an appropriate program for them. So it speeds up the assessment tremendously. Like, I don't even use questionnaires anymore because questionnaires just waste time. They are too broad. They don't laser in on my client. And so I find that it saves time. It creates rapport because now I am asking questions that are only specific to that client. I'm not asking broad general questions. I am only asking questions about my client. And yeah, I forgot to talk about this. I'll talk about it later. And so that is amazing. It's great that it's a non-invasive tool. It's great that it doesn't take time outside of my client session. I'm not having to send them off for lab tests or things. I often will have them go back to their doctor to get certain labs done, but I'm not having to spend my own time unpaid analyzing anything and putting together a program. I'm doing that all right in my client session, which is a tremendous time saver. When I originally learned iridology, I learned the Jensen style, and I was taught that you take the photos, then you on your own time, analyze the photos, create a report, and then bring that back to the next client session. With constitutional iridology, there's none of that. None of that. I assess the eyes in the context of what my client needs help with, and I create the next step program. What is the next thing they need to do to move their health forward? And I can get that easily done in under an hour. Question number 2. What styles of iridology are out there, and which ones have I studied? Well, again, I originally studied the Bernard Jensen style, and I'm not saying that Bernard was a bad person or anything like that. Please don't hear that. I'm saying that what he taught over 4 decades ago there's been so much research and so much forward progress that so much of what he taught has been proven to be obsolete. There is better information now, and that's what we work with. I've learned the RAID iridology. We had a RAID, that's emotional iridology instructor here in Calgary. Her name was Chris Smith, and she was a lovely instructor and taught me the RAID, which I don't practice a lot. I use what I need to out of that. My clients are typically not as interested in the emotional side as they are the physical side. Then I learned constitutional iridology. Started out with some VHS videotapes produced by Harry Wolf, and went from there to bringing his business partner back then, Bill Cardona, up to Calgary 2 times to teach certification courses. I am still in touch with Bill. Now this was a huge turning point for me, because with that ginsenning background, I practiced ginsenning for about 10 years and was getting really frustrated that I wasn't seeing what my teachers said I would see. They said, if you put your clients through these kinds of cleanses, you're going to see their eyes change like this. And I wasn't seeing that. That was not what I was getting. When I was telling my clients that based on what I saw in their eyes, they have this problem, this problem, this problem, I was getting big fat goose eggs. They did not have those problems. So I was just about ready to leave iridology when I don't believe anything happens by chance necessarily, but I was given the opportunity to hear about constitutional iridology. And then I pursued that opportunity to study with Bill Cardona. And that was such a huge turning point for me. What actually happened is I ordered the videotapes, I'm dating myself, VHS videotapes, right? And I'd studied them, and I was assessing clients' eye photos on my own time again. Like, we don't do that. And I didn't understand something. So I called the National Iridology Research Association, that's the predecessor to the IPA, and thought I would be leaving a message because it was late on a Friday evening. But Bill Cardona picked up the phone, and I chatted with him for a moment, and we introduced ourselves, and he knew me from some writing I had done for for someone that we both know. And I explained what the problem was, and I explained to him what I was seeing in these eye photos. And he said, well, do you see this? He said, and I said, no. And he said, well, then if you did, you would take it this direction. Do you see this other kind of a marking? And I said, yes. He said, well, then you take it in this direction. And he was able to coach me over the phone. This is before the internet. He could not see the photo I was looking at, but he was able to coach me when I'd had Jensenian instructors who could see the photo I was looking at, and they couldn't coach me. So maybe I was a difficult student, I don't know, but I fell in love with the fact that Bill could coach me, and that is how we moved forward from there. So when I'm doing iridology in my office, client comes in, I greet them, I find out what would they like help with. I do ask a few history questions, like personal family history of anything, surgeries, medications, any diagnoses from the doctor, any other symptoms they would like me to be aware of. Then I will often ask a few questions about their diet. Then I take their photographs. I do their eye photos because, when you've been in the industry for a while, you've got the right equipment. Then I pop those photos up on my computer, and I look at those photos completely in the context of what my client has asked for help with. I don't go off on tangents about, oh, well, we need to talk about this and that and the other. I keep it laser focused because that's what they came in for. They need to know they've been heard and understood. So we keep it laser focused. That serves 2 purposes. Number 1, it means we don't get into 2 and 3 and 4 hour appointments. Number 2, it means that I can keep my recommendations very, very precise and very narrow so that I can give them homework that they can actually do, that it won't be overwhelming. Okay, so we've got some questions that have come in. I'm just going to take just a moment to read them. Physical therapist in Alaska. I've experienced iridology. I got the proper training and certification. If I got the proper training and certification, can I legally add and advertise iridology to my physical therapy practice? I haven't seen anything in my state that prevents me from doing this. Hopefully this makes sense. Okay, that's a really good question, Elaine. That is going to mostly depend on the parameters of your licensure as a physical therapist. As a physical therapist, it may preclude you from advertising any other modalities. So you want to check there first. If under the licensure of your physical therapist, if you are a member of a professional organization for physical therapy, find out what their parameters are. And then if they have nothing standing in the way of it, there is nothing stopping you from advertising. Okay. Iridology is not a federally regulated industry in North America. In Russia and Germany, it is, but it's not in North America. So Treat is saying, when I went to a naturopathic convention, I met with Ellen Jensen, and she told me that there is truth to parts of the eye showing only genetic tendencies, and some parts of the eye show current health conditions. I didn't get a chance to ask her. Didn't get a chance to get her to expand on that. I'm not sure if she meant the iris is purely genetic tendencies and sclera. Okay, so yeah, that's really it. That the iris is the iris itself is genetic. The cornea may be genetic or dynamic, and the sclera is dynamic. So that's where you're looking at that. All right. Okay, great. So I think we've dealt with all the questions that have come in. So let's get back onto my little my planned thing. How to market iridology. Now, we can't get into a ton of detail because marketing, of course, is a massive question, an absolutely massive question. And so really what it comes down to, and marketing has changed a lot the last 40 years, right? For those of you who are on Instagram, I'm just going to move my camera closer for you. So you've got it better. There we go. All righty. So here's what I mean by this. Four decades ago, if you had a Yellow Pages ad, you were good to go. Nowadays, Yellow Pages doesn't do anything, right? So you have to understand how to market. The iridology market is not saturated at all. There is still a lot of room for a lot of really great iridologists. So I would encourage you that you want to learn marketing. If you've got an email list and you're an iridologist, promote it through your email list. If you've got a Facebook group, promote it on that page or in that group. If not, maybe you can do free workshops in a local health food store if you want to build a local clientele. Marketing really depends on what you want to accomplish with it and who you're marketing to. So the question of how do you market it, that's a big question. And actually, we talk about that a lot in the support that I do for my students in dynamic iridology. Okay, and I didn't really mean to pop that. I just needed to get some off my screen. Okay, so how do you find a good course or instructor? Of course, you come to my class. If for some reason you are not totally, you really want to look around, then I encourage you to look for people who are offering the opportunity to see how they teach. Now, you are joining me on this free webinar that gives you a little bit of a hint as to how I teach, the fact that I've encouraged questions, I answer questions, the fact that I have structure, and we will actually do an iris assessment later on if there's time as well. And so you'll see how I incorporate things that way. So really important for you to do the research and to find a good instructor. Cheap does not mean good. A weekend course will never give you what you need to be a really strong practicing iridologist. I suggest that what you're looking for is a teacher who not only is teaching, but who also offers mentorship within the scope of the teaching and offers support and has really good teaching materials, not just a textbook. All right. So figure out your learning style and then find an instructor who meets your needs and who meets your learning style. What support is there after training for business questions and to help with difficult cases? Well, that's something that you would need to ask your instructor, right? And the reason I say that is because some instructors, you pay for the course, you do the course, and when the course is done, it's whatever you do with it is up to you. There's no ongoing support. I've had graduates from other iridology teachers come to me and ask if I will mentor them. And my answer is no, My mentoring hours that I have allotted in the week are for my students and for the graduates of my course. My students really value the fact that I will continue to mentor them for as long as I'm teaching, right? And that's just something, a gift that I give them as a part of their course. So if that long-term support for business advice, for working with difficult cases is important to you, then you want to ask the instructor what kind of support do they give and how much do they charge. Next question, is certification important and what does it mean to be certified? The certification is to decide if certification is important, you need to ask yourself, who do you want to be certified for? Not by, but for. What is the purpose of certification? Is it to, do you feel it makes you more legitimate in the eyes of your client? It doesn't grant you the opportunity to issue insurance receipts, for example. It doesn't offer you legal protection. So it's more on the basis of, do your clients, are your clients the kind of people who need to see that you've completed a course and that you've passed exams? What does it mean to be certified? Well, again, that's dependent on you. If certification is a point of completion for you, then it's probably important. If certification is a launching point for you, for example, when you're certified as an iridologist under the IPA protocols, which is what I adhere to, that opens it up for you to take the level 3 certification, right? If you're not certified by IPA at the core level, at the level 1 and 2, you don't get to go on to level 3. So it really depends on what you are looking for. If you have a practice that is, say, herbalism or nutrition or something like that, where you have to have errors and omissions insurance, then they may offer you coverage for iridology as well. And usually that's free because iridology is not a diagnostic tool. They understand that. They understand it's an assessment tool. And so with my errors and omission insurance, I do have iridology included as one of my modalities. So for the certification is totally a personal thing, and I don't push my students one way or the other, but I support them in whatever decision they make there. There's no right answer, no wrong answer, only the answer that is best for you. What does it take to be a successful iridologist? Well, you've got to study hard. Anyone who's in my course or who has completed my course will tell you that there is way more in my course than they ever thought they would learn anywhere else. By the time we get to lesson 5 or lesson 6, they're saying, oh my goodness, my head is already swimming, right? By the time they're to lesson 20 and they've integrated most of it, they're feeling comfortable and it's good. I was speaking with one of my students yesterday, Selena, and we're just coming up to lesson 5 in her class group tomorrow. And she was saying things like, my head is swimming. I can't believe how much I've learned already. Speaking with one of my other students in the June group, and they're about lesson 15 now, she said after lesson 2, she was previously certified by another instructor, and she was saying after our lesson 2, she had learned more in 2 lessons in my course than she learned in the other certification program. So, what does it take? Studying hard. It's going to take probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the amount that you're learning. It's going to take being willing to learn new concepts, especially if you've already studied another style of iridology and you're coming into constitutional. You're going to have to be willing to let go of and open your mind to learning new angles. It's going to take being able to explain concepts to your clients. Explain them clearly and simply. It really is helpful if you've got other modalities. If you practice nutrition or herbology or aromatherapy or flower essences, those things mesh really well with iridology. Iridology is an assessment tool. And so you can help your client figure out what the root of the problem is, but that does nobody any good if you don't know what to recommend. And that's a part of the reason why I include a little nutrition and a little herbology in my iridology course, so that if my students don't already have those kinds of training, it at least gets them started and they can at least be beginning to make useful recommendations to their clients while they are then going to continue, hopefully, their study in nutrition and herbology. Is it smart to invest in an iridology course? And can you learn iridology without being face-to-face in the same room? I think it's the smartest thing in the world to invest in a course with an experienced teacher who's got a course that's been running for a while, right? And I say that because you can try learning this from a textbook. And I've had many people say, well, I can learn it from a book. I've read lots of books. A book will teach you the markings. A book will not teach you how the markings connect and what questions to ask. A book can't teach you the nuances to pay attention to for an individual client, right? Can it be learned without a face-to-face course? Well, ask my students. Can it be learned over a live internet course? The answer would be absolutely yes. I could put one of my students on the spot. She's on the webinar with us right now. I could ask her, does she feel like she's learning well with a live webinar? And, you know, if she's willing to just weigh in, I'm not going to call out her name here because I don't want to embarrass her, but I'm hoping she will. And if she is willing to just drop a comment into the chat box about whether she feels like she's able to learn well with live webinars, then I will share her answer. Alrighty, can I make a living doing iridology? That all depends, right? I don't believe you can make a living using only iridology. This is why I really encourage you to have modalities. And so if you offer nutrition, if you offer herbology, combining it with the iridology, then your iridology people come in and you can broaden them out. And, you know, if you work with a product line, you can work with some herb products or some vitamin products with them. If you've got a nutrition person coming in, they just want to know how to improve their diet, and you can incorporate iridology. So do you see what I'm saying? That if you've got more than one tool in your belt, you can attract a larger group of clients, and that's how you can really expand your business. Brianne on Facebook is saying, can you use iridology with virtual clients, or is it most effective in person? Can it be used virtually? If so, how? In order to do it virtually, your client has to be able to get decent photographs to send you. Now, there will be limitations there because you have no control over the amount of light, over light artifacts, over the angle of the light, or even you won't even know how their device, probably their smartphone, is altering the colors, and then how those colors get altered on your computer screen. So there are some limitations, but it absolutely can be helpful. So my student did decide to weigh in. Thank you so much, Julie. She says, yes, I've learned so much in the short amount of time. I love Judith's teaching style and all of the material to study. I hope to continue my iridology studies with Judith. Thank you, Julie. That warms my heart. That's exactly what I'm aiming for, is to not only teach iridology, but create really strong bonds with my students. I want to create I am creating, and have been for the past several years, creating an iridology community of my students where my students support each other, where I support them, they support me. It's just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for that testimonial, Julie. I appreciate that. All right, so getting back on course. So yeah, you don't need to be in the same room. The beauty of a webinar-based course is you can space the classes out. We do one class per week for 20 weeks, and that allows students to practice and study in between classes before we add new content. And that's what I want to have happen. I want my students to have time to practice, to come up with questions, to figure out what are their weak links, what are their stumbling blocks, what are they not getting, so that they can bring it back to class and we can discuss it and make sure that it's solid for them. If we taught this in a face-to-face thing where it was 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days, 6 to 8 hours a day, there would be no time for that integration of learning. And I think the integration is critical. How can we take our iridology practice from a paid by the hour, financially limiting business to a business that does not have an income cap? Doing one-on-ones is going to be the bread and butter, right? Doing one-on-one consultations and setting it up so your clients want to keep coming back to you. And my clients will come in for 4 or 5 appointments, then they're in a good place, they disappear for a few years, then as they get older, their body shifts, something changes, they come back in, and we'll do another 4 or 5 appointments, and then, you know, they're in a good place. And so they're in and out of my life at intervals, and I'm fabulous with that. I love that because I love knowing that they're in a good place, but I also love knowing that they got such good results that when there's another glitch, they want to come back and see me. And so that is the bread and butter. However, again, you want to have a supplementary income stream. And for me, that is Nature Sunshine products. I have a few other product lines, but Nature Sunshine is my primary one. And so I am able to sell those products to my client. I don't like sending my clients to a health food store because I don't know what they're going to bring back. I don't know what the quality is. I don't know if they're going to get exactly what I wanted them to have. And then they spent money that we can't work with. When they're using what I've recommended, then if there is a question, if they're having a symptom that they didn't think they would have, they can reach out to me and I will understand why that's happening and I can modify the directions I've given them. And so if you're interested in learning more about Nature Sunshine products, reach out to me and I can help you get set up. So can you make a living doing iridology? Absolutely, especially if you've integrated it with other modalities. When I'm trained up, how will I know how much to charge? That's a really great question. That is going to be determined by where you live, what your target market is, who your clientele are, and what the market will bear. Routinely, IPA suggests that you should be charging about the same for a 1-hour consultation as a massage therapist in your area would be changing. I will tell you with my 4 decades of experience and with all the other training, I charge more than that, right? And I can. People don't bat an eye at paying what I'm asking because they've heard about me usually from a friend that has had amazing results and they want those same results and they're willing to make the investment. So when you're starting out, you might start out a little bit lower than what a 1-hour massage would cost, and you will build from there as you get experience. Question number 10, after I finish training, where can I go to get business mentoring to help with difficult cases? Where can I go through if you have questions? My suggestion is you go back to your instructor. Now, again, some instructors do not offer long-term support. So if long-term support is important to you, that's a question you want to ask. Does your teacher offer long-term support, and what does that look like? Is there a fee for it? How do you access it? What is the support that's available? All right. The last question I have here is, if I become an iridologist, do I have to buy an expensive camera? Now, we're going to take this back to an analogy that I like to use, and that is of a mechanic. If my car's making a funny noise and I take it to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, yep, I know exactly what's wrong. It's this thing right here that's broken. But I only assess things. I don't know how to fix them. You're going to have to take your car to Jim down the street. He's the one who knows how to fix things. Are you ever going to go back to that mechanic again? You've had to pay him for an assessment, but he wasn't able to take you further. Now, knowing that, when you have a good car mechanic and you take your car in making a funny noise, they can isolate the problem, they know how to fix it, and they've got the right tools to do it. They get you in and out in 2 or 3 hours. Are you a happy camper? The same is true of iridology. We all start out with handheld lighted magnifiers like this one. And that's where we start, because a proper iridology camera is going to be between $2,000 and $4,000 US, right? So I don't encourage my students to start with that camera. I had one student who didn't listen. Love her dearly. She was a good iridologist, but by the time she finished her training, she had decided she wanted to go into coaching professionals on how to write books. And so she bought this camera, which she's not been able to sell just because she's used photographic equipment is only worth about 25% of its original price, even if that equipment's in really good condition. And so I just tell my students, don't buy anything more than this until you finish your course. You know you love it, and I'm going to teach you how to save up so you can buy a camera and not pay service fees and things like that, right? So important. I don't believe in incurring debt if we don't have to. And so yes, you will ultimately need a professional grade camera, and in the scope of our course, I will show you the 2 different setups that I have, and I will tell you why I like them, because one setup is good for one kind of client and the other is good for another kind of client. So you've got to know what kind of client you work with. I work with a lot of people because of the years I've been in the industry, and so I've got the 2 setups. I also encourage you, okay, having your camera is going to make you look more professional, so that's good, right? It also means that you can have records of what your client's eyes looked like. And I will often print up their eye photos. I've got a little portable 4" by 6" photo printer. And on that, I will put my client's name and whether it's a right eye or a left eye, because they don't know how to tell a right and a left apart. And I will put my name and my phone number. And then I will give that to them. And it's sort of a glorified business card, right? It's amazing how many people bring those photos back after 5 or 10 years and say, hey, I found my last pictures, right? Really cool, right? So that's a lot of fun. Julie says, do you see clients in your home office or in another building? I do it at home. I have had an office elsewhere. I got tired of paying overhead. The office was broken into once. That was a nightmare because there was damage done and things stolen. The front window, I was in a little strip mall. The front window had a hole blasted in it. Somebody had, I don't know, shot a hole through it. And thank goodness my landlord paid for that repair, because he said, if this happens again, it's out of your pocket, right? And so I'm much happier at home. There's the commute, the traffic is not bad to get from my kitchen to my office, right? And it means that my time can be a whole lot more flexible. So I love working from home. It works for me. It wouldn't be for everybody, but it totally works for me. All right. So just to touch on the screen that you're looking at now, in all of my credentials, I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and I am one of only 5 level 3 IPA instructors in the world. Level 3 is a new level that was introduced just over a year ago, and I was fast out of the starting blocks to jump through the hoops to do that certification. And it was a challenge, I'll tell you, but it was important to me to grab that certification. So important. Just before we look at a set of eyes and do a quick analysis, the next course is starting on October 12th. And if you want to talk with me about the course, if you have an anatomy and physiology class under your belt already, that is the one thing I am insistent on. You've got to have an A&P course, college level, not high school, but college, under your belt already. Then I encourage you to book a call, tinyurl.com/insight-call, for us to talk about the course to see if it's a good fit for you. All righty. I only teach health professionals, and I define that as someone who has a college level anatomy and physiology course under their belt. If you don't have the A&P, we cannot go deep. You might as well do the home study version of my program, which you're welcome to, but you won't get me. You'll get the program, not access to me. If you want to learn this at a professional level and you've got A&P, we should talk. We should talk. All right. So eyes. This is one eye from one of my clients who, and I want to make sure my Instagram friends can see this really well. There we go. And just make sure that this is feeding through properly. Okay. There we go. Perfect. So this client came to me, she was in her mid-30s. She'd had fertility issues. She'd been trying to get pregnant for the last couple of years. She'd had one conception that ended in miscarriage. So when we look at her eyes, we are looking at a lot of things, but we're focusing on what can this eye tell us about why she's challenged with fertility. So we can see that she's got some shading in here in various open areas or lacunae in her eyes. That doesn't necessarily tell us anything about her fertility. Her eyes suggest that there may be a personal or family history of the MTHFR defect. Now, if you're familiar with that, it means that she doesn't methylate. If she doesn't methylate her folate and her B12 properly, that will always have an impact on fertility. And so we also, as we look at her eye, we see this white haze starting to form at the edge of her iris. That's in the cornea. That suggests that her liver may have inefficiencies. It may not be processing carbs properly. It may be messing with her blood sugars. We also have contraction furrows. That's these rings coming around here, which tell us that she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium too quickly. So these are all things that suggest that could add up to why she has problems with, why she's having problems getting pregnant. And so when I saw this haze at the edge of her eye, I asked her if there were carb cravings, and she said yes. And so we suggested cleaning that up, and I gave her some really concrete instructions on that. And with that, with cleaning up her diet in a way that would balance her blood sugars by making sure she was taking methylated B vitamins, we were able to actually help her conceive. She conceived about 3 months later, which was exactly what she wanted. She wanted to conceive. I did not need to talk about every single mark in her eye, because some of these marks are irrelevant to the question at hand. I focused only on the marks that were significant to what she was looking for. And that meant she felt very heard. It meant we could address the problem very directly. So really important for us to remember, we don't have to launch out into a deep, deep dive on every appointment. Right. When I work with a client, and particularly with a fertility client, and they get pregnant, I really work to make sure they're seeing me every month to increase their chances of a healthy pregnancy. And then for 3 months after the labor and delivery, to make sure that things are doing well there. And then I remind them that I work with more than fertility and pregnancy. I work with babies. I work with general health. I work with men. I work with husbands as well. And so just work at helping them to understand that I'm not a one-trick pony, right? And from there, they often become long-term clients. And that's really about how long the iris assessment took. It's just asking the question, do you crave carbs? Carbs, yes, I do. History of miscarriage, got it. Long time of being infertile, got it. Oh, I did ask her how long her menstrual cycles were, and they started out at about 75 days. And with our diet correction, we got her down to 30, which is fertile. 75 is not. And so, we just ask a few key questions, connect that to what we see in the eye, and it helps us to create the program we want. Elaine is asking approximately how long, how many hours is the initial training? Initial training. I'm assuming you mean the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course itself. The course itself is 20 classes long, 2.25 hours per class, 1 class per week, right? That's the course. Then there's also optionally, no extra charge for this, but it's offered to all of my students, live mentoring, live group mentoring twice a month for 1 hour each time, where students can bring extra questions, they can bring cases. That's where we talk more about business development. And we also have a private social media group on the MeWe platform, where students can continue to ask questions, where they can create community and discuss what they're learning, discuss challenges they're having, share news about their families even, like, did they just have a new grandbaby? Did they just get a new puppy? So it's a community of iridologists who talk a lot about iridology, but who also share their lives there. So again, I hope that answered your question, Elaine. So actually it's 45 hours of training for the level 1 course that prepares you for level 1 and 2. That includes IPA level 1 and 2. And that prepares you to begin the certification process, which is mostly included in my support for you. There are some other things that we need to be aware of, but we won't dive into those right now. And so with this, my friends, again, if this sounds intriguing, if you're thinking, yes, I want to learn constitutional iridology and I want more information about the course, please schedule a call, tinyurl.com/insight-call. And again, this is open to you if you have completed an anatomy and physiology course, not a course that integrated anatomy and physiology woven through things, but it was a separate standalone part of any other training you've done, or you did one just because you thought it would be fun. Yeah, I do things like that all the time. And I would love to speak with you. I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to share more details about the course, but especially to find out about you, where you're at, where you want to go, and see if the course is actually a good fit for you, and if we're ready to get rolling with the October 12th start date. So with that, my friends, thank you for being with me today. I love that Ken says Nature Sunshine is great. He said that on Facebook. So thank you for that endorsement as well. And I look forward to hopefully speaking with you on a phone call and certainly seeing you in future Thursday morning workshops. Thanks so much. Have a fabulous day. Bye for now.